Hi everybody, it is Steve Olson with WSO, March 31st, 2016. Very intense stuff from all over the world. But today we're going to look a little bit at some of the Earth cracking up and some of that corroborating evidence and then updates from around the world and just some interesting observations that we're finding. Before we get into it too much though, I wanted to take us back again, once again, to the South Pole Australian Antarctic Division's SkyCam, the one that's used to look at natural clouds, natural light clouds, and the views that we've been getting. And we still do see these faint objects there. The sun is moving up the Earth a little bit to the north, and we're not seeing as clearly. But I wanted to kind of point out more specifically this triangle and how it has this almost like call them extra atmospheric cloud structures that look like they're outside of the atmosphere and this other object outside of the atmosphere. Now, just kind of keep that in mind for a second when I take you to this next thing here. So here's a YouTube posted by Judson Stanley, and in this YouTube, they actually filmed some of these what seem like extra atmospheric cloud structures being constructed, and got some really good footage of it. And again, it has that same kind of angular pattern or triangular pattern starting out there relative to the horizon. And just it's an interesting cloud structure. We just keep wondering, are they building some kind of large holographic signs and wonders type mechanism in our atmosphere so that they can use it to deceive the people once this event happens or when it goes by? It's just a theory that some of us look at. The next thing I wanted to take a look at was this excellent footage from Don O'Brien with the world apocalyptic kind of opening up the earth. But what's interesting about it is just recently it's just been increasing in intensity. Here we see footage from Mexico where the earth has been splitting. We see footage from Mississippi. We see footage from China in this video. All over the world, literally, we're seeing sinkholes and all kinds of very strange phenomenon that we haven't seen in the earth before, at least not in my lifetime. We never saw this kind of stuff. So just kind of check this video out and you'll see more of the footage from around the world where there was the splitting. Now these are the images that disturb me the most because when I see this object, and this is Sam Merritt reposting, I think, some gun stuff, but what we see here is this um, winged object with a debris trail behind it. And when we see it next to the sun like that, or when we see it coming at us like that, or in our vicinity, it's just a very unnerving thing. And it's also one of the things that NASA doesn't like it when we post a lot of it. So here we are again. We're seeing it more and more frequently now. And then the day before, Gun actually picked it up, and I have the links below. Picked it up again from a different cam. And you can see again, we're seeing this particular object with the debris trail very often now. And to me, that's a sign that we're looking at it's coming closer. And it's something that we need to keep our eyes on and we need to have a heads up on it, okay? And then finally, I've got some footage from Christine Micro who brought me basically she said, look, in Melbourne and in Australia, the phenomenon still happens. And they're getting like the big red ball clouds which we theorize are iron oxide dust. So that's something that another link that you can go take a look at below. And then finally, wanted to, before we move away from the internet, wanted to look at Space Daily. They talked about is Planet X to blame for Earth's mass extinctions, and now that they have admitted that there's a 10th planet, and now they're starting to come up with the same hypothesis that we've heard from scientists like Graham Hancock, like all these different scientists that have said that there's been more regular cataclysms on the Earth than what we realize. And I think this is important to point out because I do believe that the Earth does go through an ass whooping about every 12,000 years. And the reason it's 12,000 and not 3,600 is just because this system moves through our solar system doesn't mean we're perfectly lined up every time for an ass whooping. Well, 12,500 years ago, I'm convinced there was an ass whooping. And that ass whooping included the flood of Noah, which has been recounted by the various cultures from around the world and the survivors of that event. And I think that we can see some corroboration there. and then we can see corroboration with the Egyptian records in the Comin Bible. So again, not just because Nibiru or the Wormwood system comes through our solar system doesn't mean it's going to whoop our ass completely every time. Now, what the way things are lining up in this one is an ass whooping. So I think that we're looking at, potentially, a lot of damage in the northern hemisphere because we're being pulled towards it. And so I think the north is going to get the ass whooping, and the south is probably going to be less damaged based on what I'm learning right now. So with that said, let's take a look now, kind of close the internet, and let's go look at some subscriber images, if my internet will be so kind as to close. Now, I know this is kind of a repeat. This is basically one of the subscribers that likes to give me a lot of information and things like that. So here we've got day 273. I actually showed this because I thought that the red cloud was very meaningful from this a couple weeks ago. But he came back at me and said, "Man, Steve, open your eyes up. Look at what's going on in this photograph." And he was pointing out all the different objects that were visible, even with the sunshine. And this was like that New Year or the Christmas Eve photograph. Just, yeah, right. I mean, there's more there than I could ever see. This is an interesting photograph from one of the sky cams. And basically what we're seeing here is three orbs, or a large orb with orbiting bodies around it. And it could be magnified. It could be some kind of a reflection or image, but it's interesting. Then you look at this one and say, "Oh, look at all the water droplets in this one, Steve." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot of water droplets in this one." So I was about ready to throw it away until I did this. And I kind of went behind the clouds, and voila. That's not a water droplet. These are water droplets. That's not one. So what's disturbing to me is we keep catching these planetary images, or where we think that there's actually, it almost looks like an eclipse type of an event going on there with some of the photographs that we see. So big bodies floating around, and here's one where we see the object actually illuminating, uh, as it should if the sun was at that angle to it and it was sitting either to the side or slightly below it. And that corroborates also with the photographs that we saw from earlier in the week, where we saw the Core 2 image with the planet next to it. Again, I'm just seeing the big planet image everywhere, and it makes me wonder if one of the planets has been swinging around in front of our solar system as the star approaches our solar system and perihelion around the sun. This is from Alaska. This is a convincing photograph, and the reason for it is it's right at sunrise, and we see this bright object lately, right before sunrise, preceding the sun, and here we got a distinct two-object view of it where there's no clouds to obfuscate it. And then the skycam imagery has just been crazy lately, guys. This seems like upper extra atmospheric clouds, all kinds of activity going around the sun. These dots are getting much, much brighter, and they're showing up all over North America. Here's in Canada, where we're seeing all kinds of objects and activity. But we're also seeing this kind of, and I think we got a couple clearer views of it soon, and I'll show it to you, where we're seeing the planets in the cloud structure. Here's where we caught a planet shot again. People are telling me they're seeing the planets with their naked eyes and taking pictures. This isn't like took the picture and later discovered a planet. This is, oh my God, I saw it, and then they take a picture. I wanted to show this to show that Croatia is not exempt of from the chemtrailing. I mean, this is clearly heavy chemtrailing happening in Croatia again. Again, what are they hiding? Think this stuff through, you guys. And then here's an interesting image from Davis just recently, where we actually see the big orb, little orb, again, right above the sun, and just interesting stuff all the way around. Here's one where somebody from the Gold Coast in Australia sent me these images that they took of this rainbow. The problem with these rainbows, though, is there's no rain, and they're not like prism effect. It's just strange, guys. Again, if you're coming here to the channel for the first time, we're showing stuff like red clouds, iron oxide dust, space shots, all sky cam testimonies from around the world, personal photographs, and showing that we have an inbound system. And one of the things that we've been talking a lot about lately is this permanent halo around the sun, and it still exists. Here it is in Australia again. And just because you can't see the halo doesn't mean it's there, because they chemtrail it pretty heavily, and depending on the angle of view that you have, but it is there, and it's there 24/7. And I believe it's in space. They're trying to hide the system. Here's Ed, came at me with, when he watches these all sky cams, especially in Australia, he actually sees all kinds of activity going on. So if you've got some time, go take a look at the all sky cams in Australia at night, and you'll see some of that activity as well. This is again, this, I'm not used to seeing this bright of. It's just getting brighter and brighter, guys. And again, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm just trying to tell you that the phenomenon is, I mean, if you could see my desktop, I have literally hundreds of files to go through from people that are showing me compelling evidence from around the world. And the reason that we want you to know is so that you can prepare yourself. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Here we are in Trondheim in Norway. And again, you say, well, what's so unusual about that? Well, what's unusual about this, guys, is that the sky is completely lit up 360 around this observatory, and it's nighttime there. It's probably about, or I think it would probably be 4 a.m. would be my guess. Okay, that's why that's an important photograph. Now here's the one I want, one of some of the ones I wanted to get to before we left, and that's just these things are stopped. It stops being lens flary, and they're starting to be solid objects across the Skycam network. So just to go take a look for yourself. And then here's a photograph that we got from, down at the McCurdo station, and this is one of those things where you catch it live. They're not gonna archive these images. We just luckily caught, again, this object, the object that is in question that we think is heading towards us right now. And just look at how defined and intense these different orbs in the sky are becoming. And they're not lens flares, guys. I mean, we've been looking at these cameras for a long time. I know the difference between a lens flare and something in the sky, and clearly what we have here is something in the sky. Look at, there's little stripes in it, man. Crazy. Here's from Nambia, seeing the huge red, just beams of light coming off the Earth. And again, we got Norfolk back, and Norfolk is still showing some pretty intense imagery of the blue orb and this, something closer to the sun. We think that these are planetary structures that are refracting from just above the sun. And then I just went out just to see what was going on myself, and I just point out there is an orb. That's not an orb. I think that's a refraction or a magnetic interaction between the sun and this object. But I believe that these orbs are our planets, and I think that they're getting closer. Here's an interesting one from one of the webcams in Egypt, where we can actually, maybe make out, orbs or planets in the background. And again, I'm struck with how close we're seeing stuff lately. That's the thing I want to impress upon you. And we're going to inevitably see more earth shaking, more earth violence type of stuff. Now here's where we caught one of these little oops on one of the Soho cameras. But when you look a little bit closer at this piece, you actually can see a couple objects that come out that you didn't see in the previous ones. So again, we see the objects in different views. This is just a weird photograph because of the beam of light and the way it just like came down. And then here again, we're seeing, like, if you look back into the clouds, when you're looking at the clouds, you'll notice that you can see local clouds pretty easily. But if you notice, you can sometimes look at clouds that are extra atmospheric and see stuff in them if you look closely. Now, oh, Steve, look, it's another one of your, demonic Minnie Mouse photographs. And no, the interesting thing about this one is it came from Texas just a couple days ago. So now I have one from Hawaii, now I have one from Texas, and I have one from the UK. So this phenomenon of the sun wings coming at us like that would tell me that I think that some of the prophecies are coming true. So that's what we have for tonight, guys. I really wanted to end up and just talk a little bit with you guys about just getting ready. And there's the practical thing of getting close to the Lord, which I talk about all the time. But I really want you to know that you need to have at least 3 weeks of food and water ready to go. I don't care. Every American should have 3 weeks of food and water ready to go. And make sure that you get a radio, some kind of a broadband, multi, function radio that you can listen to news reports if things get bad. And, have an escape plan if you live on the coast. Have a place to go. I pray for you every day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Hope you're doing well. Bye bye.